A really warm welcome to our webinar today. We're just starting. The webinar's literally just started, and I can see people are coming in from the waiting room. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for getting here early. Crikey, how about that? Start of a new year and people are turning up for a webinar early. It's fantastic. So a massive welcome to you all. It's a really cold day here. I'm actually in Chippenham in Wiltshire. It's about -1, -2. Is it feeling cold where you are? Just let me know in the chat, because it's great to connect with you, to know that first of all you can hear me. That's always good. And let me know if you can you hear me? Can you see me? I'm going to drop that in the chat as well, so that you, if you are struggling to hear me, we're going to get some feedback. And let me know, is it cold? How cold is it where you are? One of the things that working from home I find is that you know, sometimes I have to persuade other people that the heating needs to go on. I don't know if you share a house with somebody who you need to persuade that they need to turn the heating on. Today is definitely one of those days. So yeah, people telling me it's very foggy outside. Other people in Chippenham, freezing in Salisbury. Chattering of teeth, drowning me out almost. But interesting. Foggy in Corsham. Yeah, working for heating's on, -2 in Swindon. Okay, Andrew, yes, I'm not surprised. Freezing, -2, yeah, cold. Okay, well, it is cold today, but the really good news for you is we have got a very hot topic to warm you up. So in a minute, we're going to be talking about how you can measure the success of your digital marketing, and particularly your digital marketing automation, and understanding how successful you're being. Obviously, it's key. It's going to be key to anything you're doing, because you know you don't want to carry on doing things that aren't working, and if something is working, you want to do more of it. So it's a great way to start the new year, to focus on how do we know it's working. We've got a great team of presenters here today from Rika Digital, who I'm really looking forward to introducing to you briefly in a second. But it would be completely wrong if I didn't signpost the fact that after this excellent webinar today, we've got other ones coming. In fact, we have got a whole series of months ahead of us of great webinars. So this is just an intro to talk you through some of the ones that you can expect. We've got webinars on leadership, looking after yourself, looking after your business, finance, alternative finance, things like crowdfunding, startup finance, looking at sustainability, making money by doing good. And we've got all kinds of other ones coming in the digital space as well. So focusing on leadership, focusing on finance, focusing on digital. And it's all about digital today. We've got Rika Digital here with us, and it's going to be a really, really good session. So what I'd like to do is just introduce you to them, and then I'm not going to take up any more time, because I know that with so much content, with so much expertise on the webinar, if I talk any longer, you're going to hate me for it, because you're going to miss out on something great from them. So we have got Matthew, we have got Christina, we've got James, and not on screen because of bandwidth challenges, we've got Jaula as well. And I'm really, really pleased to have so many people with so much knowledge about how to run marketing automation well. They have already done 2 webinars, so if you just dropped in for this one, possibly not, because you've already heard the other ones, which is why you're here. But if it turns out that you've only come to this webinar and you've missed the previous 2, don't worry, they are available on replay, they're on demand. And to be honest, once you've watched this one, it would probably make sense to go back and watch the other 2 again, even if you have seen them, because it's going to refresh your mind about how they all connect together. This is measuring results, things they've already been talking about. I'm really, really excited to hear what they've got to say here. So I'm going to hand over to James and Christina, who are going to talk us through, and then Matthew and Jaula are going to come back in the Q&A towards the end. If you have questions as we go along, please drop them into the questions pane or the chat. They'll come through to me. We're going to take the Q&A at the end, but I'm going to be gathering them together. So any comments you've got, any observations you've got, any questions you've got, please just drop them in the chat, and I will be a bit like an air traffic controller today, keeping those for the guys so they can carry on, and then we'll pick them up towards the end. So a big warm welcome to Rika Digital, and I'm just going to hand over screen sharing now to James, who's going to be picking up and leading us through the slides this morning. So James, I'm just handing over to you now.
Okay.
And you should be getting that control coming over. And just let me know. Well, in fact, when you share your screen, I'll tell you how. Yeah, great. So great. We've got the slides come up. Fantastic. And I'm just going to take my webcam off now and hand over to you. And you have control, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'm going to hand over straight back to Christina to do a quick intro and recap of the previous two sessions so that you can orient yourselves a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So Christina, over to you for a short while.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason, very much for the quick introduction. This is us. Very quickly, the agenda. Today we have a longer session. It might be a bit full on compared to some of the previous sessions, but hopefully you will have some solid takeaways from it. We're going to start today by a very quick recap of what we covered in the previous webinars. It's number 3 of our series, but don't worry, they're all on demand, and this one in particular is quite broad, so hopefully even if you join for the first time, it will make still perfect sense. We will cover today the essential planning for measurement to be meaningful. We'll try to bust a few myths around measurement and analytics, and perhaps some other topics in digital marketing, such as search engine optimization, this sort of broad term. We will talk about what to measure, how, why, and when, with an example framework, the one that we adopt in our own work with clients, and the one that's applicable for any business of any size. So hopefully something to take away and try to apply in practice in your own business. We decided to leave the Q&A at the end this time around, which is a slight change from the previous webinars, because we just want to make sure that we can cover everything. But please, whilst we run the webinar, ask your questions in the chat windows, and this will close the webinar. So very quickly, a quick recap what we covered in the previous webinars. In webinar 1, we talked about some of the foundational principles of marketing automation. In webinar 2, we focused a little bit more on the tools, about what you can utilize depending on the type of organization you have. We looked at various software applications, marketing automation tools, things that you can go and try out and see which one is the best fit for your business. And we discussed a few prerequisites as well. Basically, these are the things you need in order to start a marketing automation program. Interestingly, so we talked about the fact that you do need to have a list of segmented contacts, define strategy, user journeys, maps, workflows, diagrams, which will define your marketing automation. We briefly discussed about the messaging maps and the fact that you need content assets. We will build on that today. We will talk about how to define that strategy initially, and how to measure success at the end, because those things are interlinked, they're connected. So we will focus a little bit more on the items that I showed you last time here on this slide, which are prerequisites to the final thing that I've done in the previous webinars, and it was a very quick, brief demo we run in HubSpot, which was automating the consent management. So we did a very quick flow setup in HubSpot of how via a Christmas card, and was at the time, you can assign your contacts to various active and inactive contacts, and those that have given consent for further communications and those that have not. So this is in a nutshell, very briefly, what we've discussed in the previous webinars. So today we need to close this circle and talk about measurement and planning. So often when we talk about marketing automation, irrespective of whether you are experienced in marketing automation or you're just starting out, often the one metric that we talk about is open rate. And that's actually not the best way to look at measurement. So a very good cartoon I like here from the Marketoonist is around the subject line testing, for example, and the absurdity about how we are over obsessing on open rates, but is this really a meaningful metric? If this is the dominant metric that people look and talk about when judging success, this can sometimes be taken to the extremes and is not really the point why you want to do marketing automation. At the end of the day, the automation helps speed up certain processes or help you convert more sales, but it has to work for your own business. So in order to do that, you have to start with the right framework, with the right strategy, and you need to know what to look at the end of the campaign and what success looks like. So hopefully in today's session, we will be able to give you some of the frameworks and tools. At the end of this webinar, the presentation slides, as well as the templates and framework that we're presenting, will be available in the Growth Hub article, which I've promoted a few times before. Please do go there, read the whole series in an article format, and download the templates we're showing you today.
Okay,
So,
thanks, Christina.
Back to James.
So yeah, I'll take over from here. So the webinar today is really around how to measure, but as you'll discover as we progress through the session, actual measurement part of this is probably the bit we'll cover last, and we're focusing really on how you plan for successful and meaningful measurement. And building on the previous slide, there are lots of things that you can measure which aren't particularly helpful in understanding exactly what the impact that your campaign has had on your business. So the first step really is not measurement at all. It's about knowing what you mean by successful in terms of your particular business and particular marketing campaign. So in the example that Christina showed, the outcome of that was to improve the understanding of our customer base, so that we understood who was opted in and opted out, and that we could make them further communications on. But in general, your marketing activities are really around business performance. So in general, you need to define and quantify what a good and bad outcome is going to be from your particular activity. So a bad outcome of our example would have been actually everybody opted out. A good or nobody responded or engaged with the campaign at all. A good outcome would have been that we had a 50% increase in opt-ins over the current level. So it's all about quantification in order to make this work properly, and it's all about understanding really what's helpful. So 100 email opens is not a business target, but 100 sales as a result of that campaign most definitely is. Even better, 100 additional sales over and above the background level of sales that you already have is the best way to understand whether or not a campaign had actually had an appreciable impact on your business, rather than just retain the status quo. But if you're emailing cold prospects, is 100 additional sales even achievable? So you need to really understand and define different metrics for the different stages of customer relationships that you have within your business. So some examples there: a target prospect that's not currently aware of your business is going to need different measurement than a target prospect who has engaged but not yet bought from you. And again, different from a hot lead who may be very close to actually buying from you. And again, different from an existing customer who has bought once or more from you, and a repeat customer then, which is a potential advocate. So all of those people which you may or may not be addressing in a single campaign really benefit from different measurements, because they all have different impacts on success or not of the campaign as a whole. So to illustrate that, you can see this is a sort of an enlargement of a previously used diagram, which shows some of the different elements of the campaign and the different mindsets that a customer might be in that I've just described previously. So in that C stage there, we're looking at our largest audience that's available to us, and those are generally those that we think are in our target market but haven't yet engaged with us as a business. So we want people to learn about our business. In the think section, we've got people there that actually we think have heard of us and maybe have engaged with us, and therefore maybe we want to have a slightly different message to them. And then finally in the do stage there, and these will become clear in a little while, these are the people that actually are close to purchasing or actually are on the path to purchase, and again highlighting that really those interactions need different measurements because they mean different things throughout those 3 stages. So some common misconceptions about measurement and metrics. So this is important to cover before we get into the detail. If your business needs to sell 1,000 widgets, well then knowing that you've had 1,000 email opens or 100 likes on the social media account provides nothing of value in of itself. However, measuring these vanity metrics, as we'll call them, like impressions, ad impressions, post likes, shares and opens, can provide a valuable insight into how a campaign is performing, allowing you then to make some changes during the course of the campaign to make sure that you're not wasting budget, to make sure that you're not targeting the wrong people, and to make sure that your success metrics are actually useful to you as a business. So there's lots of debate around vanity metrics, but they're only really an issue if you're using them to measure the overall success of your campaign. If you're using them as data points to point you in the way of how things are progressing, allow you to be able to increase or decrease budgets or increase or decrease volumes, then they're very, very useful metrics. But you need to understand and be able to comprehend why you would define them separately to the meaningful success metrics, which are really oriented around business performance. So some examples of a good quantified success metric for a campaign might be, okay, we've sold 250 units between the start and end of the campaign in Q2 2021. So that's a very, very sort of quantified and discrete success metric. Or we've got 15 sales appointments booked in February, or we've got 10 demonstrations given before the end of Q1 2021. So these are very direct and detailed success metrics that will really help you understand whether or not you're shifting the needle in your activities. And they're very, very different and much more oriented towards your business performance than the stuff like shares and opens and stuff, which are just genuinely just combining to create the circumstances into which those business performance metrics can be met. So we talked now a little bit more about the framework that Christina mentioned, and it's called See, Think, Do and Care, and essentially it's all around making sure that you understand the different mindsets that your customers and prospects may be in over the entire life cycle and your entire sort of qualified audience, so that you can talk to them and communicate with them and most effectively measure the responses of the different campaigns or different campaign stages that they may be part of. So the C, if you like, group is your largest addressable qualified audience. So who are all the people that you can possibly talk to that are relevant for your business, service or product? The think stage is a subset of that, of those that have got potential commercial intent. So it's no point advertising to people that if you're selling coffee machines, if you know that you've got an audience of non-coffee drinkers. So understanding and qualifying who your audience is and isn't is really key. So in this think stage, this is basically your understanding of those audiences that have got some potential commercial intent with your business. Thirdly, those that have got in the do stage, that's more action oriented. So they have a strong commercial intent. So you have some factors that you understand, like you might have had pre-sales inquiry calls or emails. You may have had you may have products in carts that are sort of sat there in the buy later stage or something of that nature. So that you have some understanding of basically that subset of your customer base that are in that particular mindset, is that they're very, very close to purchase. And then lastly, in the care stage, that's your current customer, somebody who's bought at least once from you. because they're obviously the opportunity there for repeat purchase, to nurture, to get them to be advocates of your business is the opportunity. So if we map that against the examples that I gave previously, so in the C stage, a target prospect is not currently aware of your business. In the think stage, there's a prospect there who's engaged but not bought from you. In the do stage, you might have a hot lead who's maybe close to buying from you. And lastly, in the care stage, you've got a customer who's bought once or more from you.
James, before you move on to the actual template,
yep.
On these, to many people, these may look a little bit like the funnel. So from awareness to conversion, a little, so the familiar funnel, but it's slightly different mindset. So the idea of this framework is to try and put yourself in the shoes of the customer. So the reason why their name See, Think, Do, Care is because of the intent that the customer has at that point in time. So they're seeing, they're becoming aware of a brand, they're thinking about a particular need or a purchase, they're doing something, they're making a research, they are subscribing to a newsletter, they're actively researching to buy, and in the care stage, they need care from you, and you need to provide them care because this is an opportunity to upsell, or this is an opportunity to have more advocates that will refer their friends. So it kind of tries to flip the familiar funnel into a slightly different customer-focused approach.
Yep, great, thank you. Okay, so here's our basic framework, and we're going to step through section by section and with some examples of how you might prepare a plan such as this. And right at the bottom there, in the last two rows, you can see we've got output metrics and input and process metrics, and those are the measurements that you will make based on the information that you've provided, and all will become clear very shortly. Okay, so the first stage of this framework plan is to define the audience, and we've already talked a little bit about that. In this example, we're going through a notional business that sells coffee machines. So that's the sort of general idea behind how we're filling this in, but obviously it can relate to any product or service that you have, and we use our own consultancy services and we plan our campaigns in exactly the same way. So it's very applicable irrespective of your business sector, size or shape of your business, or where that business takes place. So in the broadest category, the C category, those that we want to see our business and be able to start being aware of our products and services, we know that in the context of a coffee machine business that they should be people that enjoy great tasting coffee. Okay, so we're not going to be marketing to people who don't drink coffee. And we're not going to be marketing to people that predominantly drink tea, for instance. So there's a little bit of market intelligence here presupposed about the work that you've already done in your business to know who and who are not your target customers. In the think stage, so this is the people that we know because we have some data, or we have some research, or we have some actual physical evidence within our own business records and data, are that people that are thinking they might like a new coffee machine. So we've got some idea of people that maybe have responded to previous campaigns, people that are looking at particular pages on your website, and lots of other factors such as that. In the do stage, we've got people we know who want to buy a new coffee machine and want to do that either now or very, very shortly. So again, we're going to be picking up on customer intent here. How we know where these customers live and what signals they're showing that produce this is a more complicated topic, but it starts to really help you in planning your campaigns if you just try and segment them out in this way. And then lastly, our existing customers, we should all know who our existing customers are. We should have at least some records of those customers, who they are, and therefore we can understand, we can treat that subset very differently than people at the other end of the spectrum who haven't even become aware of our business yet. Okay, second stage then is an idea of what the mindset might be of those particular customers, and try and think about your customer here rather than thinking about what your business might need them to be. So in this particular example, the people that we want to market to, who are our largest qualified audience that aren't currently aware of our business, are people that say might believe that we manufacture stylish and high quality coffee machines. People in the think stage would be those that are considering buying a coffee machine and know that Acme are a good brand. Those that are in the do stage are, I want to buy an Acme coffee machine because of X, Y, and Z. So specific reasons that customer understands about your business. And lastly, I think Acme coffee machines are great because I've already bought one and I recommend them to my friends or to my family. So with that information, then we could start to think about what the key messages might be to those different groups of people when we're doing our marketing. For those that we want to try and understand, help understand our business more and reinforce some of the great things that we do, we can start saying, okay, right, we're number one in coffee machines. So we're trying to reassure people there that may not have heard of us before, of our provenance, of the fact that we've got, you know, we're well regarded, and that we produce high quality coffee machines. For those in the think stage, so we're trying to convince people who might be aware of us but haven't yet gotten into a commercial mindset. Okay, when powdered coffee is no longer good enough. Okay, so we're trying to reinforce here that we're not just selling coffee products, we are selling something that is going to enhance their appreciation and enjoyment of coffee drinks. In the do stage, we want to start perhaps being a little bit more specific about some of the products and services that we are providing. So reinforcing that we're simply the best, and we can reinforce that with a number of different factors, which we can come on to a little bit, but not including. So things like reviews and ratings and stuff that we might have from existing customers. So these are the communication messages that you might want to reinforce at that particular stage, because you've got somebody that's very close to buying from you and you're really just trying to push them over the edge and convince them that you are actually the best product for them. And then lastly, in the care stage, the most useful thing that you can get your existing customers to do is advocate for you, so to review and recommend your products and services. So the calls to action and the messaging and the marketing for those different groups, as you can see, are very different, and they're not generic message that goes out to all of your customer base, because that's really a waste of marketing resource, because everybody is slightly different in the way that they will think and respond. So also useful to think about then is what would be the touch points that people would see, or you want them to see, when they're in these different mindsets. So for those that aren't yet aware of you, you want them to learn more. So you want to try and get them to drive to your company website or to landing pages for a specific campaign. You might want to start promoting social media posts and doing advertising there on a broad basis, just to introduce your brand and what it stands for and the products and services that it offers. In the think stage, again, you want to be driving people to landing pages, but perhaps you want to be getting people to subscribe to a newsletter where they can have updates on the products and services that you provide. And also maybe let's try and get them to follow our social media accounts, so that we know that we've got an audience that will see our communications beyond just broad brush advertising. In the do stage, we want to redrive people to product pages. We want to get people to save for their products for later, put them in carts, but maybe we want to drive them in store. It's obviously difficult in the current circumstances, but traditionally, if we do have any retail outlets, or we have distributors or suppliers that have retail, then obviously getting people to actually see the product in person is always a good idea. And then lastly, touch points for those existing customers will be get them to register a product if they haven't already, get them to engage with after sales, get them to advocate on social media. Okay, so now we understand a little about who they are, what their intent is, what kind of key message that we might want to provide to them, and where that message might need to be provided. We can start thinking about some of the content that we will put into those various different places. So we want to be able to show, for those who we want to try and attract to our company, what our brand ID is, what we stand for, our values, our product quality, innovation that we might have, or if we're unique in a particular market. For those that are aware of us but not yet bought from us, we want to try and reinforce some of those tangible USPs that we have as a business. We want to reinforce that we're a lifestyle match for them if we're a lifestyle product, or we're a business activity match if they're a B2B product. We want to make sure that they start to see reviews so that they can start to feel reassured that this product or service is good in the market and is well regarded by others and the peers. And we may want to start offering some gifts, some bundles or some discounts to incentivize people to actually start thinking about the product, or maybe try this product above something else because of a price differential or a price advantage. For those that are close to purchasing, we will obviously want to try and tip them over the edge. So the content there really needs to be about features of the product or service that you have that's different. Make sure that the range of product or service that you show people are relevant to this particular audience. So if you can, the better that you can segment your audiences and understand who they are, the better that you can do this particular stage. Again, reviews and special offers to try and make sure that they see that you are a high quality company that is also competitive in the market. And then lastly, for those existing customers, then really the content there is around quality of service. Have you got any kind of community, whether it be a social media community or whether it would be a customer community elsewhere, and can you upsell them based on what they've previously bought? So these are the sorts of messages that you would tend to put together for these types of customer groups. And then we start to think about the channels. So we know what we want to say, and now it's about where we would like to say that. And again, that varies a little bit depending on the various intent and stages of life cycle these customers are in. So for this broad audience that isn't yet aware of us, we obviously want to try and tap into any web searches and display ads, and we can also advertise on social media. With the targeting allows us to be able to get close to those people that we believe are in our target audience but aren't yet aware of our brand or product. For those that are aware but haven't yet purchased, again, search and display ads is really critical. But then obviously we can start to use social media, our social media account feed, and also potentially influencers there that they might be following to actually reinforce our products and service and the quality of it. In the do stage, we can start looking at pushing reviews and some retargeting maybe. So once we know that they visited the website and looked at a particular product, we can actually do some search and display ad retargeting at that point to reinforce those visits. We can start maybe tapping into any retailer media if we have any distributors that we can go into partnership with. And then we can start actually doing some email marketing as well, because obviously we've got some details about these people. They've engaged with us, they've expressed a strong interest in the product or service, and so email might be a really good opportunity here. And then lastly, for the existing customers, then obviously a regular newsletter, making sure that the information is in the CRM that we have, and we're continually enriching that data with understanding about who they are. And obviously some website content for your existing customers is always good, because that is also something that, irrespective of the stage that you're in as a customer, it's always good to see what existing customers think about you and what existing customers may get as offers of premium service or after sales service for products and services to further reinforce the quality of your business. And then finally, we come to the topic that the web session was all about, and that's about measurements. So once we know all of this information and we've planned out and understood the different mindsets that we have, we can start to then think about what metrics are useful to measure in each of those particular circumstances. So at a very high level, for those that we want to become aware of our product and service, then we can start to measure the increase in website visitors to our particular website, whether that be the whole website as a whole, whether that be particular sections of it, depending on if we've driven particular ads or email marketing or other marketing activities to particular pages. But we need to measure at that point, and we don't just measure the number as an absolute. We measure it against the backdrop of what we've done, what you may have been performing at in the previous sort of quarter or 6 months before the campaign started. In the think stage, what we saw here, the customers in the consideration phase, and so here we might want to measure the number of demonstrations that we've given, or the number of online trials that have been provided, the number of social media follows that we have to our account itself, or the number of repeat visitors. Christina, I don't know whether you've got anything further you want to add to these.
Yeah, so what's important in the output metrics, and as in different to what perhaps you may think of when I mentioned at the beginning, the vanity metrics, is to measure the difference between what you currently have and what you had after the campaign. So where we have at the beginning in the awareness stage, number of website visitors, what we mean here is try to measure the uptick, the difference between before and after, the increase in website and especially new visitors, because this indicates awareness. Another output metric, depending on the sector you're in, might be you might want to run a customer survey using, or a kind of a dip-in survey as well, to measure how many people are aware of your brand. And there are quite a lot of accessible tools, or even social listening tools. You can measure awareness as well with trends analysis, using, again, popular tools, Google Trends analysis. The idea of the output metric is to try and gauge the difference between your pre-campaign and post-campaign metric. In the consideration stage, for example, again, try to think about those in terms of difference. So difference in social media pre and after, rather than the total volume and numbers. Similar with the repeat website visitors, this is a really good metric, for example, to see how many people have shifted from aware to a consider stage, so in the thinking stage. So repeated visitors is a very good indicator for that. If you don't have enough of those, then perhaps a revisit of the messaging might be required. I don't know whether you want to keep on, James, with the evaluation.
Yeah, so to build on that then, so the outcomes are the business outcomes that you really want at this bit, or you can expect at this particular stage of the customer intent. So it's no point measuring increase in sales for those that are in the C stage or the awareness stage, because it's far too early for that to be a meaningful metric. But for those that are in the do stage, then absolutely, number of sales, demonstrations, calls received, product page visits become valuable metrics to understand how you might have shifted the dial from previous activity. But if you then look at the in-process metrics, so what we mean here are, these are the things that you can measure but aren't success criteria on their own, but they give a good indication about whether or not you're on target to meet your business outcomes that you want the campaign to reach. And these are things that you would monitor right from the start and all the way through the campaign, and if necessary, make changes. So email opens, we discussed this one at length to start with. If you're a week into the campaign and you've got a very, very low email open rate, you might want to consider, okay, what's the reason for that? Is our targeting incorrect? Have we emailed to the wrong segment of our business? Is the subject line and the subject matter resonating with that particular segment? If it isn't, then there's an opportunity there to actually make some changes, and before we start sending out further batches or next stage emails, we might want to be able to make some changes to that particular email subject. Similarly with the reach and frequency, if we're doing advertising, if we're not reaching the number of people we expect to, then what's the reason for that? Is our targeting too narrow? Is our budget not big enough to be able to deliver the results that we are expecting? Now, share of voice and brand lift are quite advanced topics, but it's also very important from an awareness perspective in this large group of people that are potentially customers but aren't yet aware of whether or not how you can start to measure the shift that your campaigns may be having in terms of awareness. So is there a way that you can understand whether or not the people that you're reaching are now more aware of your business as a result or not? If they're not, then the messages aren't resonating. Maybe there's not enough recall in terms of the messaging and communication style that you've got. Maybe the touch points themselves aren't providing the information or relevance that people are looking for. So these are really interesting areas where you can start to understand a little bit more about how you can improve the campaign messaging and the campaign assets to be able to ensure that they're performing in the way that you would expect them to. The easiest ones to measure are things like likes and shares and stuff, but again, so if you're getting lots of new likes and people are sharing your content, well, that's a good sign. It doesn't mean to say that your campaign is going to be a success, particularly if they're not visiting the website and these things are just happening on the social platforms themselves. But at least it's an indicator that your audience is being reached and that you're actually starting to see that you're getting the right people interested in what you're doing. If we're moving to the think stage here, then obviously more important here than just an opening of email is somebody that's actually going to click through and actually look at what assets that you've designed for their particular this particular segment. And if you're starting to see a percentage increase over the previous periods in branded searches, so are more people actually looking for your brand now with brand searches? So are they typing in Acme coffee machines rather than just coffee machines? And this is data that you can acquire and start to understand a little bit about how impact of some of your more broad brush awareness campaigns may be having. Are the number of click-throughs that you're having from search increasing as well? So not only are people searching for you, but actually clicking through to your website or to your landing pages based on the results of those searches. And the bounce rates on your landing pages, again, are quite indicative about whether or not you're reaching the right people. So getting a low bounce rate isn't an outcome of a campaign in of itself, because actually what you really want to do is organize demonstrations or be able to get repeat website visitors. But it is an indication about whether or not you're reaching the right people with the right message, or whether or not your campaign touch points are communicating the right thing to the right people. In terms of those that are with a buying intent in the do stage, then obviously some of the in-process metrics to have a look at while the campaign unfolds is, are you getting more unique visitors? Is the session duration on your website increasing, particularly around the product pages? Are people searching now not just for your brand, but also for your product names or product IDs within search? How many people are you now starting to convert from being people that might want to buy, that people that have actually bought? And are you getting checkout abandoned? So are you getting people that are starting the process but for some reason not completing it? So these are all factors that you can evaluate as the campaign unfolds and make changes either to the website, either to your messaging, and also maybe to even follow up with some automated emails that when people reach this stage and people are in this particular mindset, you might want to send out another email that's based on a set of rules that actually then further reinforces the emails from previously. And then lastly, in the care stage, so the things that you're looking for, really the sort of the measurements that you're starting to want to try and understand there is, okay, are we starting to see a number of repeat transactions? What's our customer lifetime value? What do people think about our organization? Are we starting to get people that are more advocating for us more? Can we do some reviews? Can we do some surveys to understand a little bit about how they are? And then can we use that data to better inform some of the other activities in the other segments? So building a complete picture with this framework here allows you to really hone in on understanding the life cycle, understanding all of the various touch points and messaging that you have that's relevant to them. And then in the context of this sort of webinar is, okay, how do we then start to measure, and what should we start to measure in order to be able to make sense of whether or not our campaigns are moving in the right direction, or whether or not we need to make some changes to our thinking, our targeting, our planning, or our touch points. Anything further you'd like to add to that, Christina?
It's just no, not really. I wanted to just send a message that it really is the starting point before any marketing automation campaign, to sit down and think in the context of your own business. Try and fill out, may not be necessarily just this template, but a similar template will help you really hone into the right message for the right audience, and will give you the planning for what metrics are meaningful for your business. So just try to think about the output metrics and in-process metrics carefully. They need to be meaningful for your business. We're obviously giving some examples here based on the example we're running through, but they may be slightly different for every business and for every industry and context. And what my recommendation would be, when you look in the in-process metrics in their definition, try to use tools for benchmarking. There is a lot out there. I'll mention a few names here. So Smart Insight is a very good place to look for benchmark metrics. Try to find the benchmark for your own industry, so that if you've never done this before, if you don't have anything to compare your previous results, you have at least some level of understanding what's good and what bad looks like, just so you have a temperature feel of what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's often a bit daunting to start analysing and looking at metrics in this kind of depth when you don't have any data in order to be able to understand whether that's good or bad. But of course, all the data that you capture and retain and produce reports on leads you to a better understanding of what happens in successive activities as well. So even if this is the first email campaign you've ever done and you don't know whether or not 5 opens is good or 5,000 opens is good, keeping that data and using it as a baseline for your next campaign is obviously critical. So don't forget all the activities that you've already done. Don't forget to keep a record of them. Don't forget to actually produce reports that allow you then to be able to measure against and benchmark against them in the future. And a lot of these tools, and are most simplistic, the Google tools, analytics, always allow you to be able to compare a metric against the previous period, whether that be previous quarter, previous week, previous day, previous year. So there's always something in order to be able to understand whether or not you're moving things in the right direction or the wrong direction. And there's also a really simplistic mistake some people make, is they think an increase in something is always good. But an increase in bounce rates is definitely not good. An increase in website bounce rates means that actually more people are leaving your website without consuming it properly than they are. So be careful when you're putting your reporting together that you're not looking for increases in everything, because in some cases you're looking for the complete opposite.
Often such one is the impression one if you're doing any advertising. So a good number of impression doesn't translate necessarily to reaching more people. So just keeping grasp, if you're doing advertising, for example, into these metrics is important as well. I think it's a good time to open for some question and answers here, because I think there will be quite a few in relation to some particular metrics or benchmarks or anything else the audience may want to cover.
Yeah, great. Okay, I'm really glad you've pulled a halt there, because I've got one already. So let's just throw it open to the audience. Bring your questions, so just drop them into the chat and I'll start assembling them, passing them over to James and Christina. But I've got one here for you straight away, Christina. So when we were talking about that scale, see, think, do, care, somebody asked a really good question. It was Pete. He said, what are the triggers that would identify when a customer moves from see to think and kind of up the scale?
It's a good point. So when we talk about people that again, it depends on the context and the industry of the business, but a good indicator of somebody moving from just general browsing or not even awareness intent for purchase into thinking to purchase, that is, for me, my go-to place is search trends. Trying to see what people are searching for in terms of are they mentioning any of the products or services that my brand is offering. This is one of the key areas that but it could really depend on the, maybe if we have a bit more context in the industry, we can be more specific, but it will be slightly different for the different industries. So
yeah, I mean, I think one of the most simplistic metrics that you can measure that help you understand any of that transition taking place is between website visits and repeat visits for those particular users. So has this individual visited your website multiple times? Have they visited the same page multiple times if it's a product page? If that's the case, and obviously you won't know that it's a particular person, but you will understand the volumes of people that are in that category. Then you could start to understand a little bit about how they then are transitioning, and of course you can then use that data to be able to try and capture some information that you can do some more with. So you might decide to devise some automation that allows you to capture an email address, an inquiry, when people reach a threshold of repeat visits to the website. So you could start to pop up a data capture form that allows people for you to send some more information specifically about that product or service. It could be something simple, like a quick email form for further information, or to prompt for do you have any questions about our product or service, something of that nature. That allows you then to be able to quickly move and act on the trigger point, which might be, okay, right, this is going to be displayed to those web sessions where we know that this is their third or fourth revisit or something of that nature.
That's on the reaction side, but definitely this is how you'd kind of move them along. But in the recognition side of things, I would still observe whether it's the person initially came to our website via a very generic search click versus a more specific search query, for example. So we didn't talk much about the tools and how you measure these things as well, which I don't know whether it's something that the audience wants to cover, but some of the really good tools, your friends here, are obviously your own internal site search, which has to be enabled in Google Analytics, and Google Search Console that has to be enabled on your website too. Often also some of the marketing automation tools that we've covered in the previous sessions offer that intelligence in their own reporting. So if you tag your website with their tracking code, they will give you this information, and then, as James suggested, you could set up the various automations based on these trigger points, but you do need to see them first in order to set up these automations further along the lines, and they may be different for each business. But for me, the easiest one, in addition to the repeat visits, it's how the customer came to our website. Was it via generic search or via very specific search that's relevant to our brand, for example?
Okay, got another question here, if it's okay. So somebody's asking, what does NPS stand for?
Net Promoter Score. It's an interesting metric. Do you want to, James, to explain a little bit more about that? Or?
Go for it, Christine.
No. So basically, it's an interesting metric which had, again, a fair share of discussion in the marketing world. It's Net Promoter Score. Basically, is something that I'm sure all of you have been exposed when you've used a service from bank or any other service, when they ask you to rate how likely you are on the scale from 1 to 10 to recommend your business to your friends, family, colleagues, and so on. And based on that, 9s and 10s basically are the higher percentile, and there is a calculation. So you can there is a great resource on specifically on Net Promoter Score, again on the Growth Hub. So if you want to familiarize yourself with how this this is calculated and how this works. Search the Growth Hub and you'll find it around customer lifetime value and NPS. But that's a good metric to send to customers once they've interacted with you. And it's very simple, just 1 to 10, and the rest is a calculation.
Just to add to Net Promoter Score as well, if you're going to use it and get into, because there's lots of analytics behind it, there's lots of companies that claim to help you move it up. One of the challenges is making sure you are really comparing yourself with similar industries. And sometimes, depending on the industry you're in, that can be the single biggest challenge. So like all analytics, and kind of the point of this, you need to make sure you're measuring the right things for the right purpose, and the numbers and the comparatives you're using are absolutely spot on, because we've previously spent quite a lot of time on this in different organizations, and it doesn't work if you're not comparing. So if you're a sole trader with a small business, you need to make sure your comparisons are spot on to know you're getting benefit out of using that.
And that brings us on to another question, which was actually just a reminder. You mentioned a benchmarking tool. Was it Smart Insights? Was that the name of the tool?
It's the Smart Insights is a bigger platform with lots of content there. So generally they have paid services, but they do publish very regularly blog posts, which are showing benchmarks across social and analytics data. So it's just a good tool. This is free. It's part of their blogs. They often publish those, so you can use it as a benchmark. Yes, so Smart Insights UK specifically. There are other tools.
Google themselves, that they have a very large benchmark database.
That's mostly on the advertising side, but Google Trends and Google benchmarking tools are also very good. Holo, if you have any particular ones that you use as well, that you can recommend as well. I don't know, but for me, I use Google Trends and Smart Insights the most for the UK specifically.
I would like to add that depending on the channels that you're using, you might find some, for example, if we use LinkedIn as an example, they tend to have blogs and also like research about the benchmark. So you can get those from the source.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah. So across the different platforms that you might use for your activities, whether that be Google or Facebook or LinkedIn, that they all will have internal benchmarks as well, and data points that you can refer to for your business size and sector, and to try and orient yourselves, if you like, into how well or not you're performing at that particular point. I mean, I think you should be cautioned against just using that one particular source of information, because obviously those are skewed perhaps towards their own business models. But when you look at across the different channels and the different benchmarks that you can see that are being offered, it's sometimes easier to get an average picture about where you think you should be as a business.
Okay, I'm going to fire another question at you here, if it's okay. So somebody in the service healthcare sector, they're monitoring bounce, click-through rates linked to each ad. They're saying many actual appointments claim to hear from third parties rather than our ad, so not easy to follow on to think, do stages. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. So I think what they're saying is they've got people are hearing from other advertisements, not just their own. Is that clear enough to answer? Do you want me to go back and ask them for more information?
Yeah, I think this is a topic around attribution, which is a big topic in of itself. But obviously the measurements that you take and the data that you get, you need to be able to attribute those results to previous actions or to particular sources. So the very easiest example of attribution would be if you're doing a promoted post on Facebook, for instance, then the link button that you have on there, which should link through to your landing page or company website, has a unique code on it, so you can attribute the visits to your website to that particular activity on Facebook. So that the idea of attribution and being able to make sure that you understand where things have come from and why is critical in terms of being able to put together some useful measurement metrics. So in this particular example, it sounds like you need to be able to attribute against the activities that you yourself are performing versus those that are coming from either aggregators, suppliers, or distributors, or business partners, or even competitors. And understanding where stuff comes from is as equally important as understanding how much of that stuff there is, if that makes sense.
It's very interesting because what they're saying is, as far as I understand correctly, there is already advertising or activities going on, but they are not necessarily bringing in anything. They're getting most of that from referrals, and that to me could be attribution problem. So you're not aware, but assuming you already are tracking the click-throughs from the various content, then it sounds like either the creative or content, or perhaps even the targeting that is being applied needs review. So if you're not getting any results from your own activities, but rather other places, then a review of your targeting and creative is definitely in order.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a quite complex question. We'll be more than happy to, if you want to refer us, more than happy to have a conversation around that, see if we can shed any more light.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So I've got a question from Polly. She's thinking of adding a web chat function to engage website visitors and capture contact info, forms, etc. And they're really just asking, has that been covered in your previous webinars, or is there something you could recommend to them?
I think, Christina, you covered it a little bit with the.
So yeah, we did talk about web chat in previous sessions, but I'm more than happy again. Maybe if James put our contact details again, absolutely no problem if you just want to have a chat with us very informally. We haven't specifically talked about tools. We did cover it in the context of the marketing automation platforms, because often those tools actually already have a chat function available in them. And in fact, if you are looking into web chat, I would advocate not to look myopically just in a single chat, but use the opportunity to implement a platform which is a bit more wider, such as some of the platforms we covered last time, just to ensure that you can do a cross-channel marketing and not just web chat in its own.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you leverage more.
The matrix that we presented in the last session, which breaks down a lot of the CRM tools that we have reviewed, and in there's a few which have built-in chat capabilities, which you can then integrate with your automation for different activities as well. So I think the data will be available. If I'm pretty sure also that there's some stuff in the blog there that we've mentioned around those particular aspects.
Yeah, okay, so I think we've got time for one more question. So I've got one here from Jonathan, which I think is going to be a really good one to finish with, actually. So he is working in a small Southwest focused professional construction consultancy, architects. What he's interested in, what would you recommend as around 5 or so board level defined metrics to monitor, guide or report on the effectiveness of their digital marketing effort?
Okay, wow, that's a big question. I mean, if you're in consultancy, then I guess I'd go back and say, okay, have you segmented the audiences? Do you have the data points yet that will allow you to be able to see, think, do, and care, segment your audience out? If you don't, then before you start defining sort of measurement metrics and stuff, make sure that you know what it is that you're trying to measure and why. As we mentioned at the start of the webinar, the general metrics are not particularly useful because of the different mindsets that your audience and customers are in. But specifically for consultancy, for instance, for our own business, the sorts of business metrics that we would be looking at there are unprompted inbound inquiries, referrals from clients or partners. So those sorts of measurements really would start to come into play. And all of the stuff that at the top of the funnel in the see and think area around looking at our search data to see whether or not the Rika brand is being started to be used in searches for particular consultancy. And often, if you're a regional-based business, then it can help to narrow that a little bit down further as well in terms of what's happening within your particular geographic area. Because obviously the trend is likely to increase more quickly in your local area than it is nationally, and therefore might be more visible in terms of the data points. But I think,
sorry.
Yeah, Karen.
Another factor coming in it from the other way, the fact that you've mentioned board metrics might be to actually, where are your board's motivations or measures as well, and then try and meet it from the other side.
Yeah.
So everything you're saying, James, but actually they've probably got some very specific outputs that you can then find the correct measures for.
Yeah.
Often those are sales-oriented metrics, and the differences between, again, when we mentioned the differences between, you mentioned some really good ones, such as the unprompted inquiries, and again, for the C stages, I would say the search trends around awareness around the particular services that you're offering. So I'll definitely encourage people to, if they haven't done so already, to use Google Trends and the monitoring and listening services that are, again, completely free of charge. You can subscribe to those in Google Trends. So monitoring this on the awareness stages, and on the bottom stages, definitely around, let's say, sales-driven goals or micro and macro conversions, such as inquiries.
Okay, right. So I think we've got a question coming through at the moment, but we have just gone over 11. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to thank you guys very, very much for this session, and wrap up now. And any other questions and queries that come through in the next couple of minutes, I'll just pass those on. So James, Christina, Matthew, and also Jaula in the background, thank you so much. It's been really, really in-depth, very informative. And I believe we're going to be sending people out the kind of the guideline, the framework, is that right? We're going to be sending out to attendees of the previous webinars. And also, if you missed the previous webinar, you can see, attendees, you can see this is really good stuff. Last two were as good. So go to the Growth Hub website, go to events, webinars, and you'll find a link there for on demand, where you can watch all of the previous ones. You can pause them, you can take notes, because I know that people have been doing that today. And it's just a sign of the great content. So thank you very much, Rika Digital. It's been great. We've really enjoyed it. And clearly, you know, a topic that is very, very interesting, a hot topic for this year. Just want to thank you all very much, and wish you a good rest of the year. I'm going to pass some contact details on to you, because there are people who do want to get in touch, but we're going to end the webinar now and wrap up. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Take care. Bye.